Hey folks, this is Matt Rainwater, and today we're going to be reading the Season 2 question and answer for Trailer Park Warlock. So, as always, we've covered a Q&A before in the past, right? And I do these at the end of every season to basically give the audience further context as to what's going on in the story if they still have questions after the season's wrapped up. And also just to answer more general questions, maybe questions about myself, the author, right? And I don't know, any other little interesting questions you may have. It's also just like an opportunity for me to connect a little deeper with the audience and get into just get into, like I said, connecting with the audience. I guess it's the best way of putting it. Anyway, let's get going. Let's read through this. And of course, you can follow along with me on Webtoon. There should be the link in the description that will send you exactly to the Webtoon so you can follow along. All right, let's get started. I just want to start by saying that before I begin this episode, I read as many questions as I could. And so what I'm saying is, comments after every episode, particularly at the end of the last episode of every season. I'll just have and maybe I did it for last episode. I just didn't read over it. Maybe I glanced over it or something. I have a little thing that's just like, hey, please, send me some questions that you'd like to see answered in this season's Q&A. So anyway, let's go on. If you find your particular question unanswered, my apologies, but there were several questions to which the answer was, find out next season or in a future season. Other questions I just didn't have time to answer, as the questions I took priority with were those that I saw most repeated. So with that said, let's get to it. World building in Season 2. I've had a massive number of people ask about certain nuances and details in the lore of Trailer Park Warlock. Understandably, some of these regard intentionally obtuse or obscured ideas for the sake of brevity and intrigue. There are a couple of things that remained unclear to some readers, so I figured I would take a moment to clear up a few of these aspects of the story for Season 2. Since everything that took place in the Will of Abandon was a mixture of the memories of those sucked into it, so that'd be Pontu, Robinstone, Jake, Darla, Henry, Leah, and the Grapefruit, I want to lay out a solid history of events that took place in the definitive timeline of Trailer Park Warlock. So in other words, objectively, I guess, what happened in the history of this timeline before everything got mixed up with what happened in the Will of Abandon, right? Needless to say, but I'll say it anyway, all the events of Trailer Park Warlock are alternate historical, which is to say they're inspired by and deviate from events in our own actual history. So the next set of things is I just created a literal timeline so that you have an idea of how to connect all these events that happened in the Will of Abandon from Pontu's birth to the present. So 1784, Jacques Pontu is born in Paris, France. 1792, Pontu is orphaned after the chaos following the storming of Tuileries Palace. Actual historical event. 1796, Pontu is conscripted into the French Revolutionary Army. I should say, the storming of Tuileries Palace was an actual historical event. Pontu is not an actual historical event, just in case somebody was wondering. I'm always surprised at things that need to be cleared up. 1809, Henry and Pontu meet for the first time. 1811, in the chaos of the Battle of Barossa, Pontu and Henry abandoned their armies to leave for the Caribbean islands. So, Battle of Barossa, actual historical event. 1812, Henry purchases and becomes captain of the Demiurge. Pontu joins as shipmate. So not really covered. I mean, it's hinted at, right, and implied, and we see sort of at the end of Season 2 that Henry was a ship captain. And as we find out, Henry is a ship captain. I never necessarily said that he was a pirate, but we know that Leah is a pirate. 1814, Henry and his crew officially joined forces with Leah in the Sharkheart Brigade. 1825, Pontu meets Robinstone, a guest aboard the Demiurge. 1826, Pontu receives transfiguration from Robinstone. 1830, Pontu and Robinstone settle in a cabin outside Baton Rouge and begin their first gambling business, the Parlor of Caprice. 1832, Henry and Leah settle into their own estate and end their pirating careers to work with Pontu and Robinstone. So Henry and Leah settle in Louisiana as well. 1861, the American Civil War commences, actual historical event. I don't know if that needs to be said. 1865, the American Civil War ends. 1867, so this is alternate historical event, right? The Hunter massacres begin. 1869, Robinstone establishes the Abyssinian Church. I spent a lot of time, by the way, going through making this timeline. And when I was making this timeline, just to pause for a moment and sort of comment on this, a lot of this was pre-established when I was writing season 2. Although when I say pre-established, very generally, because like I already have a very general understanding of Western history, so I didn't have the absolute dates, but I knew like where within decade to get to decade, because it's very easy to trace historical like events by decade. The specific date gets a little trickier. So anyway, having that generalized knowledge made it very easy to write the story, because I could say, oh, okay, this particular, Pontu's childhood had to have taken place during this particular decade, like the 1790s, right, in France. And that required me to think very specifically as I went on, though, about, like, what age was Pontu when he was at the Battle of Barossa. It's quite a complicated thing to think about, right? Anyway, 1875, 1/3 of the population of Louisiana is transfigured. The Abyssinian Church is officially recognized in the state of Louisiana as a religious affiliation. Now we make a big old jump to 1967. Jake Baker is born in North Little Rock, Arkansas. So, Jake, as we now find out, is kind of in a liminal space between being a boomer and a Gen Xer. 1972, Jake moves with Gran to a trailer park outside Colorado Springs. 1988, Jake apprentices under Jacques Pontu. 1996 to 98, the events of Trailer Park Warlock Season 1 and Season 2 take place. And as a further note, I do intend on Trailer Park Warlock sort of ending around the new millennium, around 2000. We'll see how that goes. It's not necessarily important, but it's kind of how I'm thinking about it. Whew. Maybe this is too much information, but I figure y'all might get a kick out of all this. Magic, lore, and esoterica. Much of the magic, spells, rites, etc. that are performed by Pontu, Robinstone, and Hampton would be classified by the Mancers Union as arcanomancy, which is to say magic that is too old and too little understood to be of value to the craft of practicing mancers and liturgists. Here's a quick explanation of some of the terms featured. Tattoo liturgy, a method of inscribing a spell onto a person's body, often for the sake of convenience, since the sigil is always accessible and doesn't have to be reinscribed. Some sigils can only be activated by process of tattoo liturgy. So, like, as you saw throughout Season 2, Pontu had a whole bunch of tattoo liturgy scrawled onto him. Glamourmancy, magic that creates a convincing illusion of changed appearance, can be performed through tattoo liturgy, as the Abyssinian Church does, or by other various methods like photoliturgy, as practiced by Barry of Barry's Feeder Surplus. Echomancers do not practice glamourmancy, they actually turn into horses. They don't just simply look like horses. Very important detail. Transfiguration, an Abyssian rite adapted from an ancient cult called the Path of the Lowest Will, performed by Robinstone as a form of glamourmancy and later adapted by the underground market, like Barry. The Gaze of Pompeii, never mentioned in name within Season 2. The Gaze of Pompeii is a tattoo liturgy that grants the caster incredible longevity of life, used by both Pontu and Robinstone to elongate their lifespan. So basically, I added that to give an explanation for like how did Pontu and Robinstone manage to live so long, because the tattoo liturgy that allowed them to, be feeders is not the same that allows them to, live that incredible lifespan. Like they're basically like piecing together all these elements to make them appear as vampires. And one of the elements is the Gaze of Pompeii, and another one is I don't know if I actually name the thing that allows vampires to transfigure? I can't remember now. Well, it would be the Abyssian rite, right? So anyway, the Lowest Will, an arcanomancy that can only be performed by practitioners of high level focus and skill, originates from an ancient cult called the Path of the Lowest Will. The spell manifests the destructive aspects of a caster's psyche. The Lowest Will requires the inscription of certain tattoos on the user's body, as well as a year-long process of activation. The Ill Wind, a radiative byproduct of the Lowest Will. Magical emanations from the caster transform recipients into projected distortions from the caster's subconscious. Sigils begin to appear on the recipient's flesh once the curse reaches completion. Jake, Dan, Leah, and Henry were transformed due to their contact with the Ill Wind. Hampton was transformed as well, but clearly, as Pontu's familiar, he got more of an upgrade from Owl to Magical Feeder. So, in other words, I don't know, does that need further explanation? I think that explains it all. If you have any further questions in regards to that, please do feel free to leave them in the comments. Anyhow, Liturgy, used to revoke hexes, curses, and enchantments. Generally applied to wearable items like braces, collars, or amulets worn around the neck. Liturgy is effective at ending the symptoms of a curse, but not at complete disenchantment. Jake's collar, forged by Henry, was one such form of Liturgy. The Will of Abandon. I'm going to take a quick sip. Okay, so the Will of Abandon, an arcanomancy that may have been the one of the first sigils ever created. Named after an ancient game that resembled craps, but with more crystals and far greater stakes. To play the game required that a player abandon all connection to their previous life, as the outcome, whether win or lose, would change everything completely. The spell is formulated as a way to change the odds of the caster to a more favorable outcome. Numerous side effects and unexpected outcomes included. The Right of Ku Mortel, a magical sport with deep ancient roots practiced by followers of the Lowest Will. Later adapted by learned and curious practitioners in the 14th century European aristocracy, when the sport became a means of settling disputes. The winner is decided in one of three ways. 1, if a participant is incapacitated. 2, if a participant concedes. 3, if a participant is disqualified by wounding a bloodbind. Mancers considered the spells of such potency, and in some cases danger, that they are recategorized from athletomancy to martialurgy. So, martialurgy. Spells and enchanted equipment used for the purpose of military engagement. Bloodbinds. So now I'm just going through and explaining all the particulars of the Right of Ku Mortel. The rules of Ku Mortel require that, in order to instigate a duel, the challenger must commit 4 living participants, voluntary or involuntary, as a presentation of the resolve to the challenge. Each bloodbind is placed on the duel grounds and correspondent to the cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west. The Jewel of Asmodeus. Martialurgy. A protective spell placed on each bloodbind. Dissolves immediately after contact with the crack of Bale. I forgot how, yeah, I guess I just wanted to explain every single element of Ku Mortel. There you go, folks. I kind of forgot about that. The Crack of Bell, Martialurgy, the offensive spell allotted to participants of Ku Mortel, requires the use of a wand to cast. The Crack of Bell is a manifestation of channeled rage from the caster. The Palm of Lucifuge Raphael. Martialurgy, the defensive spell allotted to participants in Ku Mortel, requires the use of a wand to cast. The Palm of Lucifuge Raphael is a manifestation of the channeling anxiety from the caster. Subtle nodes. Never mentioned in name in Trailer Park Warlock Season 2. Subtle nodes are objects that can amplify the strength of sigils. Grapefruits are one curious example of a subtle node. The Whisper of Longtoe. Shamanomancy. Largely performed by Sasquatches in their funerary rites, Longtoe was an infamous Sasquatch shaman known to live primarily among the dead. Longtoe was most remembered for creating his own village of spirits that he had bound to whatever found objects he could get his hands on, usually coats and hats. Most of the spirits didn't seem to mind. Longtoe was able to perform this through his unusually powerful psychic abilities, but in time he formulated a language of spells for use by the average practitioner. So that was basically an explanation of Sasquatch magic, essentially. Robinson's Flight. Athletomancy. Invented and first performed by the pioneering magus and baseball legend Jackie Robinson. Jackie Robinson is, by the way, an actual baseball legend. Whether or not he was a magus, you'll have to determine for yourself. Originally used to honor deceased athletes by offering them a greater range of choices in the reincorporation. Reincorporation. Essence or spirit is renewed after death into a new life depending on an esoteric process of judgment not completely understood by the living. Renewed spirits can reincorporate to previous lives, live in alternate timelines, lives on distant planets, universes, simulations, and etc. Just to clear things up, right? Lightning round. Question. So lightning round was basically like I just wanted to cover kind of random questions from readers. Question. Are there any mythical races like elves, or are they all humans who change their look? Answer. I refer you to episode 19, Darla and the Backroads. Elves, along with fairies and gnomes, live out in the backroads where humans rarely dare to tread. Elves have a strong cultural commitment to the practice of edemomancy and chakra exchange, which to the untrained eye looks a lot like an unbridled rave party. Question. How did you come up with a style for your comic, and are there any inspirations for your webtoon? Answer. My drawing style is such a mishmash of odds and ends from animation and comics that at this point I don't know if I could completely trace how everything got to where it is now. In fact, it keeps changing. Just look at my work from the beginning of Season 2 to now. True. Still, here's a list of artists I consciously looked at as I learned to draw and still draw inspiration from. Jamie Hewlett, Tank Girl and Gorillas, Steve Purcell, Sam and Max, Akira Toriyama, Dragon Ball Z. I would say Akira Toriyama might actually be one of the first artists that really I tried to copy, but that's going all the way back to middle school. So that's Akira Toriyama's pretty deeply influential on me in a lot of ways. Eiichiro Oda, One Piece, Osamu Tezuka, Phoenix, Astro Boy, lots of other things. Rebecca Sugar, Steven Universe, J.G. Quintel, Regular Show, Pendleton Ward, Adventure Time. These three in particular, what I paid attention to most with them is ways to simplify my drawing. Because that's what animation's all about, is maximizing expressiveness with minimal line, basically, in minimal form. And they each have different ways of doing it. I think Rebecca Sugar might honestly be my favorite because and maybe I'm placing too much emphasis on her influence on the show because there may also be other character designers who I'm not crediting, but just the general overall aesthetic of the show and Steven Universe really, like I said, maximized emotional output with minimal like line input, and that's to me like that kind of economy of expression in animation is just it's always stunning to me. And Steven Universe was a show where they really they pulled it off incredibly well. Anyway, and then Hayao Miyazaki, the manga of Nausicaa and all of his movies as well. A huge influence on me, less so like stylistically and how I draw, but to some extent, a little bit more in the way that he tells stories. And I do get a lot of inspiration from like backgrounds and the way he draws backgrounds and technology. Direct inspirations for the story in Trailer Park Warlock are the works of Alan Moore, specifically Promethea and League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, Grant Morrison's run on Doom Patrol, Mike Mignola's Hellboy, Terry Pratchett's Discworld series, Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy books. I would say Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy I'd put that on like the top 3 list. The next thing I'm going to talk about is number 1 on that top 3 list. So the books of Robert Anton Wilson, especially the Illuminatus trilogy. I'm getting ahead of myself. The Illuminatus trilogy, I would probably say is the number 1 influence on this story. Although all of Robert Anton Wilson's work, you can find threads of it. There are lots of call-outs or cameos or homages or Easter eggs that are all related to Robert Anton Wilson's work. It's, I would say, just in general, probably one of the bigger influences on my life in terms of the way that I try and think about things, overall philosophy, engagement with my work, with my art, all that stuff. The musings of Terence McKenna and Alan Watts, also hugely influential. And I'd be remiss to not include the influence of a certain Canadian TV show called Trailer Park Boys. 100%. Question. Is there a system or anything close to one that ranks the magic users? Answer. The Masters Union ranks casters based on their experience in 3 basic categories. Apprentice, beginners who have just entered the Union and have to study under journeyed mages or elders. Apprentices have received basic training or self-studied and still need certification for work as a practicing caster. Excuse me. Journey mage, regularly working casters who have at least 5 years of experience under their belt and are well-rounded in expertise. Jake is a journeyed mage, but just barely due to the fact that he doesn't get enough work and has gotten in trouble with the Union a couple of times. Elder, casters who have worked upwards of 15 years and are now able to put their skills and knowledge into specialized fields. Many elders go into research positions in secret ateliers or teach for the Union. Question. Who was your favorite character to draw in Season 2? Answer. Hands down, it was Jacques Pontu. Because there were so many different kinds of nuanced emotions to draw with him, which is part of the reason this season ended up lasting so long. I especially liked drawing him during the Ku Mortel match. That whole segment was really fun to draw. Paradoxically, his lowest will and highest will forms were my least favorite because they were such involved designs. Question. Will you be exploring magic from South America, the Caribbean, or Pacific Islands? Answer. Season 3 will feature some South American shamanism, specifically something to do with frog poison. We will eventually get to, or I've already gotten to. I may have already gotten to that episode. Question. What came first, the Acclimancer or the horse? Answer. I think I'm going to dedicate an episode to that question eventually, so I withhold my answer for now. I'm still working on it. Question: what art program do you use for this webtoon? What type of advice would you say to aspiring artists? I need a drink of water before I read this. Answers. 1. It's a blend of Clip Studio and Adobe Photoshop. I generally draw everything in Clip Studio and do everything else, coloring, lettering, layouts, in Photoshop. 2. If you wish to become a professional artist, there are 2 disciplines that I think that are crucial to learn. The first discipline is to regularly make stuff. In the beginning, don't worry about making epics or big things. Start with making good things that are small. A fantastic 8-page short story or even a 4-panel joke comic has more legs for a beginning artist than a giant tome. At least that's been my personal experience. Most importantly, make stuff daily if you are able. The second thing is to learn personal financing. Not a popular or intriguing suggestion by any means, but working and living as an artist is a precarious balance between time constraints and budget constraints that's entirely in your hands. Every working artist wants to be able to buy the things that creates convenience and independence in their life, and they will have to work for it way harder than most other professions. But fortunately, we live in an age where information on these topics pours like rain. For every question concerning either of those topics, whether it's how to compose a comics panel or how do I make a living as an artist, there's 1,000 different YouTube channels, websites, etc. out there that can help lead you in the right direction. As a final addendum to this question, for those of you out there wanting to make something, whether it's a webtoon, a comic book, a video game, or animation, I say start now and don't look back. It doesn't have to be good, it doesn't have to blow minds or open hearts or solve world problems. It can just be something you've made for you, a friend, or family member. What's most important is that what you make expresses the idea you're eager to get out. It can take a while to get to that point where your work communicates your ideas effectively. It's surprisingly difficult at times, but just keep at it and seek honest feedback and it'll get easier. Share it and move on to the next thing. I think that's probably my best advice I got. Best of luck and Godspeed. Yeah, no comment. Do exactly that. Question: what happened to Set? Answer: find out in season 3. Set's been keeping himself busy. And before we go, thanks everybody for a wonderful season. And here's to more strangeness, hilarity, and God only knows in the season to come. But before I end the episode, let me share a couple of pieces of fan art from some awesome readers. The first one comes from at airy.d. I don't know if that's really how they intend it to be pronounced, but there you go. On Instagram, who said, I really loved reading through the feeder arc in Bobcat Jake, so I thought of doodling something low-key punny for fan art. Hope that is all right. Super excited for the next season. Thanks again, Airy, at airy.d. It's a can of magically delicious Little Baker baked beans. The second piece comes from at Beth Redway on Instagram. I love this digital painting of Jake. Thanks for sharing it. Yeah, it still stands up. And thanks again at Beth Redway. All right, so here we are at the end. Well, that about wraps it up for now, y'all. It's back to the drawing board for a couple months. Oh, but one last thing. I want to leave y'all with a question you can respond to in the comments. Yeah, same applies for those of y'all watching this on YouTube. A lot of y'all had questions concerning TPW and tabletop role-playing. And my question for y'all is, what character in Trailer Park Warlock do you think would be most entertaining to campaign with? I'll be seeing y'all in the comments section. Until then, may all your chakras crinkle and your sage bundles wrinkle. See y'all soon. So, that's the question and answer for season 2. It's a lot of stuff to go through, isn't it? Anyway, I don't know if I have any other further comments. That pretty much says everything. I guess the only other thing I'd leave y'all with before I go is, as I've said a couple of times, season 2 currently, for me, was it was the most difficult to write. In a lot of ways, it was the most rewarding to write. This episode or this season was the one where I think that I learned the most as a writer. Season 3 might be the one where I learned the most as an artist overall. Maybe, I don't know. Like, I grew a lot as an artist in season 2, and what I drew, and what I felt confident to draw. And every season, I make sure to push myself and attempt to do something more than what I did previously. Whether that's drawing in a more efficient manner, whether that's drawing drawing things that I haven't drawn before. I feel like season 2 especially was that, where I just like drew so many things I'd never drew before, like ships and snakes holding sniper rifles and stuff like that. So, like, I was trying to remember where I was going with all this. So anyway, my point is like season 2, just to finally wrap up. Like I said, most rewarding season in terms of like how much growth I went through. I think this is a season for a lot of readers that was also very rewarding for them, and for others, maybe not. There were a lot of readers who were turned off by this season because it got so esoteric and so complicated. And going into season 3, my attitude was I wanted to see if I could make it a little less complicated, but still have it be intricate. And season 3 begins what I would call like the main arc, basically. So season 3, season 4, season 5 are all the main arc of Trailer Park Warlock, and seasons 1 and 2 are the introductory arcs. Season 1 introduces you to the present world, and then season 2 introduces you to the world in the past, so that you can get sort of a full picture of like what all this zaniness is, right? Anyway, I think that's all I got to say for now. Until then, we will talk again soon. I hope you all are having a good one, having a good day, having a good evening, whatever the case is. We will talk again when we talk again, right? But hope you all are enjoying your day, and if you're enjoying these videos, please give it a like and a subscribe. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think about all this, and or whatever. We can talk about whatever. Anyway, hope you're having a good one, and I will talk to you all again soon. All right, bye.